Hey, what is up, Carmination? This is the podcast of all podcasts for the CFP final. We got Georgia taking on Alabama, which, of course, Mr. Brad himself, the Alabama fan that he is super excited about it. What I do want to make sure you guys know before we get started is if you are not in a legal state that has legalized sports betting, that does not mean that you cannot have action on this game. Luckily, we are partnered with two of the best, if not two of the top fantasy prop partners, or the single player fantasy is the industry they're now coining themselves in, on monkeyknifefight.online and pricepicks.online. Now, if you're not sure if you're in a state or not because you're not paying attention to that news, it's very simple. Just go to betkarma.com. Right in the main menu, you click on a little spot in the menu that says where to bet. Click on that, and whether you're in Canada or no matter what particular state, even if you're in DC, just click on that, choose your location, choose your state, and it'll tell you all of the possible partners in that particular state. So maybe you are in a new state that has new legalized betting, like New York, as of recording this, like an hour and a half ago, just has mobile wagering. So if you're in New York and you're like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, boom, now you have multiple partners. Just go to where to bet on betkarma.com. So what I want to do first is I want to showcase a new tool and make sure you guys understand what exactly we have, what we're featuring at BetKarma. So betkarma.com, this is your first time seeing one of our podcasts, or first time even hearing betkarma.com. We have tons and tons of free, keyword free, tools to use. We have live odds, live trends, odds comparison, props comparison, which those two are both huge, especially for this podcast. So if Brad's saying something, let's just say, for example, Brad says, I really like, team A the game total, just any bet, whatever it is, like the game total to be over whatever the game total is. I don't have it pulled up. I'm looking at a different screen right now, but just to talk about a game total bet, you can actually go, this is for NBA, for NFL, for MLB, for any of these leagues, go to the comparison tools and it'll literally show you all of the different sports books across the United States and which one's going to pay you the most for that particular bet. So these are huge tools that if you're going to try to win at sports betting on a consistent basis and you want to make this something that you're winning consistently, you have to shop for lines. If you're constantly giving up free money because you're betting on one book instead of another book when you have access to both, that is causing you profit in the long run. So with all that being said, let's hop right into it. Let's start off with Mr. Stu here. This is the first time you guys have seen Stu. He's been one of our frequent writers on betkarma.com for, I don't even know how long it's been, Stu, like 4 months, 5 months? I don't even know, man. How long has it been? How long have you been writing for us now?
Yeah, it feels like a little bit longer than that, when you go across so many sports. I was there writing NFL futures articles for you, and now the season's almost over. So time really flies by,
Yeah, I was like, yeah, you've covered so many things. I don't know which league you started with, but NFL futures, that makes sense. And then Brad, you guys have seen Brad on a few things. He's kind of sprinkled himself all over the place over the last, I don't know, 2+ years now. Deepest Karma and Bet Karma with doing some soccer stuff for us, some college football, big on PGA as well. So we made sure to bring him back because not only is he a huge Bama fan, which is the only reason we hate him, but he's pretty big college football bettor as well. So Stu, from a not necessarily like a sports betting look, but just a broad look for how you like to watch college football, what do you think of a Georgia-Alabama title game? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of conflicted here, right? So on one hand, these are the two best teams in college football. I think it's impossible to argue with that at this point. I think everyone here is going to agree with me. So considering the fact that we do get to see the two best teams in college football, that excites me. I am, happy to see the best of the best play each other. But on one other hand, we did already see these teams play 2 weeks ago. Like, I think Michigan, Cincinnati would have been like way more fun, because who knows what to expect, right? Like, I don't know. That would have been obviously great for some of my futures too with Cincinnati. But besides that, yeah, I'm really excited to watch these teams play. I think we have two pretty evenly balanced teams play. The only thing I root for in these games is I don't really want a blowout. I'm not from Alabama. I don't have a side in this fight. I'm just looking for a good football game, and I think this one should stay pretty close. So it kind of checks all my boxes.
You were saying that you had futures tickets on Cincy to win the championship?
I did. Yes, I was very bullish on Cincinnati from day one. Even UCF too. I know you'd appreciate that. Some key injuries have kind of hurt us since then. But yeah, I predicted that they'd be the first Power 5 team to ever make non-Power 5 to ever make the playoffs, and that was correct. We hit their win total over, a lot of good stuff. Was able to hedge out a little bit of the 80-1 future, but still, I felt good about it. That's probably one of the things I'm most proud of this year. So. Yeah, Cincinnati's out, but hopefully we still get a good one here,
Agreed. So let's now go to the Bama fan and get his 2 cents on what he thinks about this game. And I'm sure he's going to be like Bama by 50 or something like that. Go ahead, Brad. Sprinkle
Listen. So at the start of the season, I was not very high on Bama. There was just so much to replace. And it was a different kind of replacement, especially when you're replacing Mac Jones. You're replacing a wide receiver core. You're replacing an offensive line. The defense was the only thing where we had actual depth, and I didn't think that our defense would be able to carry us throughout the season. For me, from a fan perspective, I'm more than elated. Like, we made it to the national championship, win or lose. I think before the SEC championship, I didn't think we were going to win that game. Now I think that Alabama is going to win the game. And from a non-Bama perspective, I do think it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks.
This guy pretends that he can talk about a non-Bama perspective, but you know you can't. You know you can't.
It's tough, but it does suck though, because it's just no one wants a rematch, especially in a playoff that we literally just saw. And also, they should have known that Bama or Georgia was going to be the national championship. Like, did we really have to make it an Indy? Like, I'm in a bunch of forums and everyone's talking about how cold they're going to be, and they don't want to go because it's so cold. It's so funny to think about. But it's a dome, but you still have to walk around the street.
Bama. But yeah, the whole matchup thing, I do understand the point of that, because it's I guess if you're making it relatable to the NFL for people that don't pay attention to college, don't understand conference tournaments and stuff like that, is imagine seeing an AFC championship game, and then both winners somehow make it to the Super Bowl, and you're like, wait, we just watched this game. So what I was talking about beforehand about the Where to Bet page, I just pulled it up. I realized it wasn't showing there. So if you guys are not sure, you go to betkarma.com. As you see right here, this is our Where to Bet page. You click on Where to Bet here, or it's up there as well. On mobile, it's the same on the menu. And then you just choose your state. So I just choose New Jersey because there's tons of opportunity in Jersey. Monkey Knife Fight's available there. We have all these sportsbook partners as well. You just click sign up, and you actually get thousands and thousands of dollars of promo here, depending on which one you sign up, or if not all of them. But yeah, you can literally choose any location. So I'm located in Florida. So because we can't get our crap together, like Brad and myself, we do have the fantasy prop partners as well. We are going to be talking about Prize Picks and Monkey Knife Fight here, who do have a lot of stuff available for the CFP final. But let's go ahead and let's start talking about what you guys are looking at, what you have already locked in. Stu, I know you said that you play on Prize Picks and you have some Prize Picks plays here, but do you want to start with those, or do you want to go to the more generic bets for this game? What do you want to do here?
Yeah, we can start on Prize Picks. I'm down for that, because I do think what I did find on Prize Picks when I was writing this up at 1 a.m. last night, it was that they had some lines that were very off market. They were not really comparable to anywhere else. So that's where I'm fine with starting.
All right, go ahead, hit us up. I'm pulling it up right now. Give me a hot second here. What are you looking at right now on Prize Picks?
Yeah, so I'm going to an Alabama receiver to start off, and it may not be the one you guys are thinking of. I'm going with Ja'Cory Brooks to have over 2 receptions, which is an insanely low number, and then 38.5 receiving yards also. So both of those I got locked in last night with various different plays, and it's by far my favorite play on the slate so far. I see some nodding for Brad, too. I like that.
The only thing here, I know there's a lot of I don't know if the word is prerequisites or functionality to doubling up on the same thing. Are you able to lock in receptions and receiving yards for the same player?
No. You have to go with other plays, which we'll talk about. But I was just kind of
Okay, so you're doing the 2 receptions plus another play, 38 receiving yards plus another play. So
exactly.
I see what you're
Exactly.
saying. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I want a lot of exposure to this one right here. And people listening may kind of be looking at me going like, why are you so confident? I just pulled this guy up on ESPN and he has like 10 catches all year. Well, the beautiful part about betting on player props in general is that injuries do have a huge, kind of they matter a lot, right? We need to know the injury reports going into these games, and if you're reading them, there's a huge opportunity. One of Alabama's best wide receivers, a draft eligible prospect in Mechie, went down. He's out. The guy went down against Georgia in the last game, and what did he do in his first real game, I would say?
Yeah.
And on really one of the biggest stages, he got over this number easily. He actually led the team in receiving yards with 4 catches for 66 yards. That really impressed me. And then when you look back, he played over 60% of snaps in 2 games this year, and he got to this yards number in both times. When the guy's on the field, he's a playmaker. And I was really impressed with what I saw. They didn't even need to throw last week. So even if he didn't get this number, I'd still probably be on it. But considering the fact that he still was able to be involved in what was essentially a blowout, I'm in. I really love this prop.
Now, Brad, before we start recording, you mentioned something about I forgot which sportsbook you were talking about. You were looking at that didn't have a touchdown prop for someone. Who was?
Yeah, it was MGM, and I was referring to Brock Bowers. MGM normally has pretty good touchdown prop lines for college football, so I like to use them as my reference point. And they don't offer
Price Picks doesn't have that as well for their touchdown props here. So maybe, I don't know, is there any underlying news why you're holding off on dropping that?
I think that books don't know how to price them. I've seen some books price at 130, which I think is I don't like taking anytime score props that low, but I think that's a fair price.
Yeah, well, there are. I don't want to spoil anything that I've got coming later, but I like that name you just said, and there is a plus 100 sitting out there in a couple different spots, which I may or may not want to talk about at some point during the show.
Good, because I was definitely searching. He's going to be a name that I bounce around a little bit.
Yeah.
So before I pull down the Price Picks board here, Brad, the only ones right now I'm seeing for Barack, if we're focusing on him just for argument's sake, we do have on Price Picks, he has a 5.0 reception line and a 70.5 receiving yards line. So if that touchdown prop that you're looking for does not populate on sites like Price Picks or Monkey Knife Fight, do you like any of those 2 over-unders for Brock Bowers?
For me, definitely it's going to be reception over. I think he clears the 10 to 11 target range. It's just Alabama's not very good at covering the tight end position, and Brock Bowers is one of those elite tight ends who is, I would consider, more of a wide receiver. It's just unfair, honestly, to have to play him, and I'm absolutely terrified because that will be our biggest weakness.
So the last thing I'm going to say here with Price Picks before we move on to Monkey Knife Fight and see if there's anything there we like. I know that they don't have a touchdown prop, but I was just looking at fantasy score, and Brock Bowers is at 16. So if you're saying he's over 5, so what would you say is a safe reception number that you would pinpoint for Brock?
I would say 7. I have him about 7. And with his ceiling pretty high around 10, he'd have to convert like 80% of the targets that he's getting, but I think that's still fair.
Okay, so let's just say 7. So 7 points there because it's the PPR scoring. Yeah. And you say you're highly confident he's going to be getting in the end zone at least once, which of course is 6 there. That's 13, and his over under for fantasy score is 16. So even though it's not a touchdown prop, factoring in that touchdown there, the only way he misses that at 7 receptions with a touchdown is if he gets 29 receiving yards on 7 receptions. So chances are that's not going to happen.
He has a pretty good average target yardage. This is off the top of my head. I believe it's somewhere like 8.4 per target. So, which is amazing for a tight end.
So even though you can't lock all of these in on the same exact 4-pick play here, as we were mentioning earlier, because you have to have certain variants on what you're playing, especially for a single game contest like this SPF, this CFP final here. We have Ja'Cory Brooks over 2 receptions, Ja'Cory Brooks over 38.5 receiving yards, Brock Bowers over 5.0 receptions, and then based on how heavy Brad is on him getting into the end zone, Brock Bowers over 16.0 fantasy score. Now, depending on when you're watching this, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Karma moves lines. We have thousands of people in our community that play on these sites. So as soon as they watch this, because they're subscribed to it, they're going to get a notification saying, hey, that Karma just dropped a new podcast. They're going to pull it up. They're going to go straight to the prize pick section. They're going to start locking the stuff in, putting money on it, and these lines are going to move. So as soon as you watch this, you might want to lock them in ASAP. Let's go ahead now to what I'm going to do for Monkey Knife Fight. I know you guys don't think you guys have any plays that are already, I guess, quote unquote, pre-set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it up real quick. I'm just going to go over like just a few things that we were already talking about. Because Monkey Knife Fight works slightly differently for those who don't have an account on monkeyknifefight.online. And if you don't, go to monkeyknifefight.online. Use promo code KARMA, get a $100 deposit bonus, so you can be playing with more money when you're locking in your college football final contest. So let me see what I got real quick right here. All right, so we haven't talked about passing yards yet. We can go to that here in a second. Something that is also different for Monkey Knife Fight that I think is kind of cool is their rapid fire. So it's not necessarily just doing pure over-under. They're just matching players against other players. So Brock Bowers is in this one. So let's just – I'm going to do a 2-2. I want to do a safer 2-2 here. Let me see if I can find one Brock Bowers in it. No. Maybe fantasy points. We got fantasy points here. And we just talked about, like on Prize Picks, he's 15.0. So you're actually getting an incentive on Monkey Knife Fight by getting this 14.5 fantasy points. So Jameson Williams, right now Monkey Knife Fight, is 19.5 fantasy points. I believe nobody has combated yet the Brock Bowers over points with the expected receptions of getting into the end zone. So I can just automatically assume that over is the target there or more. But what do you guys think about Jameson Williams at 19.5 fantasy points? And again, this is full PPR. And in this particular 2 pick right here, what do you guys think?
I'll let you take this one, Stu. My opinion is probably going to be a little weird one.
Yeah, so this one worries me a little bit. I do have to say, he's a really good wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
Williams, clearly their best receiver on the team right now, but he also does have a really tough matchup on the other side of the ball. A Clemson transfer, someone I was a pretty big fan of over there as a Clemson fan myself that's having a bit of a down year. He really kind of thrived over in this new defense in Georgia. He did so against Clemson earlier in the year also. But yeah, so that's a real tough matchup. And I really think this Georgia team is going to do their best to not let him beat them. That's kind of why I was so into Brooks, because I think they saw what he was capable of a couple of weeks ago. And they're like, yeah, we absolutely cannot let this happen again. Safety help on every play, even some double coverage at times. I really don't think they're going to let him thrive. His talent could shine through. That's the beauty of college football. It really does happen a lot. Talented guys kind of just rise to the top. So I would lean under right here, but I'm kind of leaving him alone in this game a little bit.
So
okay, cool.
Well, let's just say real quick, Brad, and you can say what you're saying, then respond to this as well. So for me, I haven't paid too much attention to Bama prior to this, going in-depth research. It's a huge thing. Everyone's got action on it. So I know you're saying that he's a great receiver, but at 19.5, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, he doesn't get into the end zone. Is there a way for him to get 20 fantasy points based purely on receptions and yardage? Which, just throwing something out there as an example of what he would need, would be like 8 receptions, 120 receiving yards. Like, is he that high of a volume player that, or is this a situation 19.5 where this man has to get in the end zone to hit this 19.5 mark?
So I don't think he has to get in the end zone to hit the mark. So I don't like taking players who are not game script proof. And I think that depending on the defensive tactics of Georgia, that's going to determine the volume that Jameson sees. I think he'll hit his reception number, but that could be a lot of underneath routes because, like Stu alluded to earlier, I expect bracket coverage on him every single time he's going deep, which you're just going to need him to have to beat somebody. And I don't like relying on that kind of situation. If Georgia were to just go ahead and play him man-to-man and straight up, I'll be like, yeah, sure, we could take the over. But when you have a guy who can take the top off of defense in literally the blink of an eye, who's also returning kicks, I just hate taking under in their fantasy points. It's like one of those things where I'd rather just not bet it.
Yeah, I wouldn't take the under either, just to be clear. I was just saying that's kind of
yeah,
I'm leaning to. I mean, the guy has the question you asked is kind of interesting, right? because you said, can you get there without scoring a touchdown? Well, the guy leads the nation in 20-plus receiving yard touchdowns. He has 12 on the year. This guy doesn't need to be in the red zone to score touchdowns. So I don't know. This is a real interesting one. I really think this guy could go like 4 for 32 and be kind of silent, or like, 12 for 173 and 2. So it's one of those games. It'll be real fun to watch and monitor that wide receiver versus cornerback matchup between two future NFL players.
So just before we move on to this one I found here that I kind of like, are we saying that because neither of you are extremely confident or comfortable in that 19.5 fantasy score mark for him, that even though we like the Brock over fantasy points, because it's matched up with him and we don't want to go under, we can't necessarily say if it's going to be over or not, are we going to fade that 2 pick there? Because how Monkey Knife Fight works, like they give you, this is what you have to pick out of these options, so we can't necessarily like take that player away and put another player up next to Brock. So are we fading that fantasy points of 19.5 for Jameson?
Yeah, I think that if you go ahead and back over under, it's negative EV. Regardless, you're not getting value on taking an under and over. You're literally flipping a coin and gambling, and we don't want to kind of advertise that kind of stuff. We want things that are going to make us money.
Right, I got you. So the last Monkey Knife Fight thing I'll focus on here before we move on to the more traditional sided bets. I did mention that something that I kind of like with Monkey Knife Fight, how they're slightly different than Prize Picks, is they have rapid fire, which is pretty much matchups. So we have 6 players here in a matchup. The first one, I'm from what I'm gathering from what you guys have said so far, especially Brad, the middle one right here on receiving yards, Jameson Williams, who we just talked about, Brock Bowers, who we just talked about in the same exact play. Brock Bowers has plus 37.5 bonus. So can Brock Bowers out receive yards, if that's a term, if that's an actual phrase, Jameson Williams, if he gets a 37.5 head start?
I think he has the ability to.
Yeah.
Because I project Brock's going to get. I think his over yardage is fairly sharp, but I think his ceiling is pretty high. But now you have to just pray that Jameson doesn't break one. That's what you run into in that situation. But I would probably take the plus for Brock Bowers because he's going to be highly used against Alabama.
And then I know we haven't touched on really the quarterbacks too much yet, but Stu, for this quarterback particular one here, we have both of Bryce Young versus Stetson Bennett, with Bennett getting a 69.5 passing yard head start. What are your passing yards props, and what do you think? Is there anything that you're leaning one way or the other, or is it kind of a wash right now for you?
Yeah, this one's kind of tough, right? I mean, these kind of plays really do depend on how you view the game script going, right?
Yeah.
So if me and someone else who's watching this have a completely different idea of how this game's going to go, then we're definitely going to disagree on this one. So I'm currently kind of, despite the heavy, public being on this side, I still kind of do lean that Alabama will win this game. And I think if Alabama does win this game, it's going to be kind of on the back of Bryce Young. I mean, he's been incredible this year, the Heisman winner, for good reason. And Bennett is a good game manager. He's established himself as a very solid game manager that can win games with a good team. So I would lean Young right here, but 60 yards is a lot. And if Georgia falls behind early and you think that that's going to happen, then they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. That can make this a lot closer. These kind of bets kind of worry me here. With 60 yards, a lot can happen. I mean, Bryce Young could throw for 360 yards and still not win you this bet, which is a little bit scary to me.
All right, and then the last one here before we move off of Monkey Knife Fight, the rushing yards prop, Brian Robinson Jr. versus Zamir White, and Zamir's got a 19.5 head start. Anybody have any 2 cents on that?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I would take Brian Robinson, even against this tough Georgia team. And for me, there's a couple of things here. Alabama's backfield has been absolutely decimated by injury. Right. So they have Sanders as a backup, and Sanders' rushing total is set at 20. And I think that is like very, very sharp. I think Sanders gets about 15 yards. If you think about it from a game perspective on the Georgia side of the ball, they have Cook and White, and we're going to see about 20 to 15 snaps for Cook, which doesn't leave too many snaps like eligible run snaps left for Zamir White. So I would peg Zamir White to finish somewhere around the 50 to 60 yard total. And which means if you think that Brian Robinson is going to go over, because I think he's going to be featured a lot, then you have to take Brian Robinson because his total is set around 67. And I think he clears that.
All right, now let's move on to the more traditional side of things. I just picked one of our partners here, FanDuel Sportsbook. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but what of course I know what Brad's answer is, but Stu, are you also on board that Alabama is winning this game?
I made the mistake last time. I bet Georgia in the last one, right? And I don't feel good about going back there. I really don't feel good about betting against Nick Saban again. So I do lean Alabama here. I did hit the plus 2.5 at one point. It's not like a super confident bet. It's more just, I want to have a side in this game. But yeah, I'm not really out here kind of screaming from the rooftops that you need to beat Alabama or you need to bet Alabama right here because it's a tough game. It really is. These two teams have played each other before. A lot of adjustments are going to be made. Two very well-coached teams. It's really hard. And the spread feels trappy, right? Everyone is betting Alabama, and it's kind of going in the Georgia direction. So that always worries me a little bit.
And Brad, what I was going to ask you is, I know that you are, whether it's bias or just actual betting intellect, most likely leaning Alabama on all fronts. Are you also sprinkling, from a non-biased perspective, if you could answer the question that way, the Alabama money line? Are you still playing around with this very, very small 2.5 spread?
Listen, I'm taking the money line at +3. It was nice, and then also the money line has gone down drastically since the line is open. I got it at +130, and even last week it was like +125. So it's kind of tough to say you're getting value somewhere. I really do think that Alabama wins the game. I mean, I said this before that Nick Saban is Kirby Smart's daddy. He's beat him 4 straight times. But I don't really think that there's no value in taking either of these. It's really just who's going to show up, who's going to make the plays when it matters, and who's going to avoid costly mistakes. Because I think the Alabama team is built to, if they get ahead, they'll be able to coast. Well, if Georgia gets ahead, I think Alabama has all the weapons to try to come back. So it's going to be very interesting to see who takes the lead, because if it's Alabama, I think they just coast the rest of the game. But Georgia, it'll be a fun game if they take the lead early.
So because the spread's so close, because the money line is it's so thin, I guess you could say. Stu, are you, if you're when I say traditional bets, I just literally refer to as the basic, spread, money line, game
totals and sides.
Are you, Stu, would you be more leaning towards playing the over under on the total because of well, I guess your past bets? You said you did the Georgia money line or the Georgia spread last time and it didn't treat you too well. So for this particular one, if you're picking one of those 3 basic standard bets, would you say the total is something that you're gearing towards more?
The total's interesting because I believe I read all national championship totals have gone over except the last Bama Georgia, right? Wasn't that?
Yeah.
Yep. So it's tough because both of these teams have such high upsides on defense, right? We've seen what that Georgia defense could do all year. I mean, they smothered every single team they played except Alabama, essentially. So I'm not touching the total. It's interesting. I'd rather just take Alabama for the reasons Brad actually said a little while ago, which I thought was really sharp, the way he's explained that if Alabama goes ahead, I feel good. But if Alabama falls behind, I feel way better about Bryce Young leading a team down the field in a comeback effort than Bennett on the other side.
Yep.
So yeah, if I had to pick one of just these 3 standard, it would probably be Alabama on the spread because that total is very concerning to me.
All right, fair enough. Now, I'm going down the opportunity list here on FanDuel Sportsbook, and I know the book you were talking about, Brad, doesn't have any touchdown scoring for Brock himself, but FanDuel does have, looks like almost every player here. So they got Brock Bowers, anytime touchdown scorer, at -135. Is that something that you're still, if you're betting on FanDuel Sportsbook, you'd still be interested in?
Wait, so this line has already moved 5 cents since this morning. This is nuts. No. When I say I was looking for a better line, I've already bet Brock Bowers at -130, it just sucks that like by the time all my plays go public, I know that I won't be able to get a good line for anybody who follows me on Twitter or anything like that. It's just Brock Bowers is going to find the end zone, but you can't lay 135 minus 135. You can't lay minus 150. Those are it's just too many variants in scoring touchdowns. Because what if Georgia only scores 2 touchdowns in the entire game, or what if it's a field goal battle? You have no value in that. When I talk about the one touchdown prop that I like a lot, it's actually 2 players. You'll see tremendous upside to both of them.
So I was just going to the Prize Picks plays that Stu mentioned at the beginning of this pod, and Ja'Cory Brooks on FanDuel is 47.5. Wasn't he like just 30.5 or something incredibly low on Prize Picks?
Yeah, he was 38.5. Yeah. That's why, like you mentioned earlier, this line shopping is so huge because I will have money on probably the 45 too. That is in a couple places. But when you give me the option to take 38.5 on a guy that I already liked, then I'm gonna do that every time. And it's also the only place right now that you can get receptions, and it's only at 2. Yeah. So you got to have as many accounts as you can in all these places.
All right. Something else before we just go to whatever bets you guys have left in terms of, so nobody really loves the spread. 2.5 is a very slim margin. Alternative point spreads. I'm going to just say the 4 out loud, and you tell me if you had to pick one of the alternatives, which one you like the most. So alternative 1, Georgia plus 7.5, Alabama minus 7.5. Alternative 2, Georgia plus 3.5, Alabama minus 3.5. So Alabama's favored in both, either 7.5 or 3.5. The other one is Georgia 7.5 favorite, Alabama 7.5 underdog, and the final one is Georgia 10.5 favorite, Alabama plus 10.5 underdog. Now, of course, the side that is crazy juiced is probably not something like, if we're gonna bet on the spread that has juice, you're gonna do the 2.5 that currently exists. But to go after these nice, sexy payout ones of the alternate side, any of those, Alabama 7.5 favorite, Alabama 3.5 favorite, Georgia 7.5 favorite, or Georgia 10.5 favorite, out of those super sexy payout odds, is any of those something that you're like, you know what, I'd sprinkle a little bit there?
So for people who don't bet alternate spreads a lot, NFL alternate spreads are funny because they always get you on the key numbers. You'll be losing a key number every single time. So you have to get immense value to bet them. The only one that I would take would be 10.5 because it has to be a blowout. Like, I don't think if the game is within 8 points, it's going to be a 7-point game. You just don't have as much value on the other ones. But yeah, the alternate spreads are tough for football because you don't get past those key numbers. I use them a lot in basketball. I did the over 40 points in the Lakers game yesterday as an example. It's easier to get past when you have single digit increments.
Fair enough. Any 2 cents on alternate spreads, dude? Do you hate them? Do you avoid them? Do you like them?
Yeah, they can be fun if you have a real strong lean on a game. I think like the other day, like the Patriots versus Jaguars is a good example, right? I had a good amount of money on the Jaguars first half spread, and they were up by like 30 at halftime. In a situation like that, I think it is reasonable. Here, I wouldn't feel comfortable going on the Georgia side because the only way really Georgia's blown people out this year is really been getting pressure on the quarterback and absolutely making, them look like a high school quarterback. It's going to be really hard to do that to the Heisman winner right here. If I had to go one direction, it would probably be, on that Alabama 10 side. And if you're at 10, I would honestly look for, as we get closer to game time, a 12.5 will probably give you slightly better odds. It's essentially the same bet. Games don't normally end on 12. If it's going to be an 11-point game, it'll probably be a 13-point game at least, and probably a blowout. So that's more where I would go.
All right. So that being said, is there anything that we have not discussed that you guys have locked in, you guys are leaning towards, whether it's player props, whether it's traditional bets, untraditional bets? What else is on the table for this CFP final on Monday at 6? I think we said 6 p.m. Eastern time kickoff.
Yep.
What else?
Yeah, I guess we can alternate. That's cool. So I'll go with my Slade Bolden opportunities here first. I'm going to take Slade Bolden anytime touchdown at plus 350 and his over 3.5 reception. So John Minchie being out opens up our opportunities for two players. We already talked about Brooks, and we're going to talk about Slade Bolden. So I like the receptions because the little bit difference between Brooks and Bolden is Bolden's being used in the underneath routes of the screen game as well. He saw 7 targets against Georgia. He's seen as high as 10 targets in a game. So I expect, like, even though I like Brian Robinson to be featured a lot, I do expect the run defense of Georgia to be very stout, you know? And how Bill O'Brien, and I'm not a huge Bill O'Brien fan, so this is not me singing his praise, but how he really likes to extend his run game is a lot of underneath routes to Slade Bolden, tunnel screens. Think about that's really we run most. Sometimes bubble screens, which I hate because Slade Bolden's not very fast, but those right there are cheap receptions that even if they get 1 or 2 yards, they still count. And these has 3 touchdowns on the season, and every single time he scored a touchdown has been in the slot. And they're going to run him in the slot with no Minchie. And Minchie was a huge red zone target if you guys haven't been keeping up with Alabama. So losing that red zone target and then adding Slade into the slot, plus 350 is great value, especially when you shop it around. Plus 160 in some places, plus 225 is the highest outside of MGM.
All right. What do you have, Stu, that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, well, so I like that one a lot, and I think you brought up some good points, especially if you look kind of, even if you want an NFL example, I know a lot of my followers are NFL, think of the way that the Dolphins extend the run game with those real short passes, even with the former Alabama quarterback with Tua there, right? They do a lot of RPO, but they really, because their running game kind of struggles sometimes, and you alluded to it, I think Alabama will struggle to run the ball a bit in this game. They don't have that huge offensive line mismatch that they did against Cincinnati, where they're just like a couple inches bigger than every one of the defensive linemen on that team. So what happens when you can't run the ball? You still have to get those short and intermediate routes. You have to get those wide receivers involved to kind of spread out the defense and make them honestly. So I like what you're thinking right there. I'm also on another Alabama receiver that we already talked about. I'm going to bring him back up again. But at plus 350, the same odds that you got, I'm going back to Brooks again right here. Those odds were absolutely ridiculous for me. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yup, I got to do this. Like I said, in those 2 games, he has over 60% of snaps. He has a touchdown in both of those games. Like you said, Mechie being out, that guy's a huge red zone presence. I'm thinking a lot of new opportunities are going to be open right here. There's no way this Georgia defense is going to leave wide receiver number 1 in one-on-one coverage out there. Plenty of opportunity. So we both have plus 350 touchdowns right here.
Wait, so are you saying this bet is confusing. You're saying anytime touchdown score plus 350 for Brooke?
Yeah, for Brooks.
What? How is it plus 350? We just put it's FanDuel Sportsbook's Jack thing because FanDuel just had that minus 135 line.
No, not Brock. So Ja'Cory Brooks from Alabama. Yes.
I was like, something is wrong in my brain here. How is it that lopsided? Got it. That's my understanding. Okay.
But even Brooks, who's plus 350, is already steamed down on FanDuel to, I believe, in the plus 240 on FanDuel. Yeah. I bet it closes closer to plus 200, plus 190 closer to game time. So I think at plus 350, we're getting insane value right here. And a lot of touchdowns could be scored tonight, right? We could all be winning at the end of this night. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because that was going to be my second one. I said I had a pair of plus 350. I think this is one of those situations where you set yourself up in a game where you have both of these at plus 350. You really only need one to come home, and they both have an opportunity to both come home, which could be a huge payday. I'll go to my next play.
All right, what do you got?
I'm going to switch it over to the Georgia side, and I'm going to go under. I'm going George Pickens under 2.5 receptions and under 34.5 receiving yards. I missed the boat a little bit on his receiving yards, but it's totally cool. George Pickett, for those who don't know, George Pickens, for those who don't know, tore his ACL, and he's been trying to get work back in, like where they were going to attempt to work him back in the Georgia Tech game. He only saw 1 snap in that game. Then they were going to try to work him back in Alabama. He saw 19 snaps, 5 targets, but they weren't quality targets. It's like one of those where they're kind of force feeding him. He did hit this number against Alabama because he did have a deep ball, But then again, when we go into the Michigan game, 16 snaps, not real meaningful snaps and not real meaningful. His lone target was not a meaningful target. I think that the receptions is much safer, hence why it's more juiced. But the only way he's hitting the 34 is if he catches one or two passes that are going to be over the 15-yard range. And his target yardage is totally fair if you just want to fade me and take the over, but he's just not healthy. And it's one of those situations where they're playing George Pickens because he can be a decoy. That's about it. He's not gonna be the effective George Pickens that he was before.
This one's interesting. So I saw you said something about this on Twitter at some point, right? I was looking around, and so I'm with you on the receptions, right? I think that's a safer bet. But with the way they are using him, I really do think if this line keeps going down, which it seems like it
looks like it is,
I think I know he's injured. I know he doesn't look 100. He might not even be at 70% right now, but he's coming off some good rest. He didn't actually need to play in that last game. Like, I know on the stat sheet, people will go, well, this was an important game, but they were winning so quickly that, that was never really a game, to be honest. So I don't know. I like the under on receptions, but I really do think he could get 2 or 3 jump balls in this game. And I think he could make, if the line gets down to like 31, which I think I might have seen in a couple spots, I think I could be tempted to go over, despite the fact that we do know he's not completely healthy quite yet.
That makes total sense. I hate being the guy who's going to bet a line an under that just got absolutely demolished. And I think it continues to get demolished. But even in the games that he's playing, he's only averaging like 7 yards per target. But against Alabama, who has a banged up secondary, he will see deeper targets.
A real banged up secondary. That's a big problem. I mean, I know Bennett isn't quite the quarterback that can take advantage of it. Like maybe like an Ohio State could. I think this would be a completely would be a fun game.
Yes.
I mean, the total would have to be 75, but yeah, so they're not quite in the same position to take advantage of it, but I just think the fact that we know that Pickens kind of is the one wide receiver that, when healthy, could be a game changer on this team. I forget the cornerback his name for Alabama, but he didn't look very good last week. He was they lost cornerback number 1. Obviously, he's
Kool-Aid McChristy.
Yeah. Isn't he still playing injured? I know we got a couple guys playing injured.
He's not even going to play. The injured guy. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank right now. He has a hip problem, and he was going to test it out. Didn't work. He got burned in like 3 plays. And he's not going to play. He's not going to play this week.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well either way, I just think Alabama's banged up secondary, and
really
Pickens,
banged up,
honestly, being the only one that's kind of proven that he can be a game changer when healthy. I think he might get his fair share of opportunities, despite the fact that he is clearly not at 100% yet. So I'm kind of waiting to see where that line goes right now. I bet it settles probably 34, 35, but I'm not completely sure yet. It'll be something to monitor for sure.
So aside from, I guess my question probably is now: is this because of the matchup, because everything can kind of go either way depending on X, Y, Z? Is this something that you're focusing on? I would say like 80% of your stuff is player props for this, or is that something where you guys? I know Stu, because Stu's like a prop wizard over here, but is player props mainly being targeted for this matchup because of the matchup, or is this something where typically, like, no matter what 2 teams are in the college playoff final, that you're going to be going heavy on the player props anyway, because that's either your forte or that's just how you bet college football? So kind of like, if that makes sense in a question anyway.
I'll answer it from my perspective, and I know Stu, you have a good answer as well. When I'm handicapping a college football game, and I think that you can see multiple outcomes, you can make legitimate cases for multiple outcomes of the match, you have a better opportunity to find player props that are game script proof. So regardless if it's a blowout, early lead, that's the kind of value that you want to find. That's the kind of opportunity. And that's why I do that a lot with college football, where I like, good example, Ohio State versus Utah. I had no idea from a betting perspective if Utah was going to blow out Ohio State Utah was going to fall flat or vice versa. But what I did know is Stroud was going to pass the ball a million times, regardless if they were down by 50 or up by 50, because that's the Ryan Day offense. And so when his line was set at 23 and a half completions, I was like, he's throwing the ball 40 times. And he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in college football. So that's why I take props in games like this.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I feel the same way. Just adding on to that a little bit too. These are going to be the sharpest lines you see all year, right? We all have this time to do our research. So does Vegas. Vegas has been waiting for this game. It's also a familiar matchup. I feel like odds makers are pretty confident in the lines they have. And it's like this in any sport. Once you get to the championship, the most eyes are going to be on it, which means the sharpest lines are going to be just available. But player props are notoriously the softest market there is in betting. And that's because there's so many different factors that go into it. Like I said, I mean, my first two plays that I talked about with Brooks, a lot of that really happened because Mechie went down with injury just 2 games ago. And books are way less comfortable adapting on the fly than, your regular sports bettor is. So that's where I find the most edges and little small value plays you can get are. It's just player props in these kind of games. Exactly like Brad said, so many different things can happen in this game. But what we're looking for is the kind of plays that are going to get you there no matter how the game goes. Like if Ohio State is playing, Grand Valley State, you don't want to play Grand Valley State's running back, no matter how good he is, because they're not going to be able to establish the run against Ohio State. They're going to have to be throwing behind 20 points all game. So you just kind of have to have a good idea of how you think the game's going to go, but also look for those props that are kind of game script proof, like Brad said before.
So if you guys, when I'm referring to you guys, I'm referring to the viewers of this podcast or the listeners of this podcast, if there are any questions, if there's a particular bet or prop you guys are looking at, whether it's on, Prize Picks, Monkey Night Fight, or traditional sports book, both these guys are in our chat room. So if you do want to be like, hey, what do you think about this? Do you lean either way? Just go to betkarmachat.com, get in the Discord, and just tag the people. They're in there. They're always dropping plays. But I'll go ahead and I'll wrap this up with a final question. Out of everything that both of you guys have dropped on this 47-minute podcast, what is the ultimate? If somebody's playing one thing, what is the ultimate one thing? If they're like, listen, I got like $20, I'm going to put it on one play. I don't want to sprinkle it here and there and a bunch of other things. What are you telling them to put that $20 on just so they can have, that excitement action of watching the final here? Brad, I'll go with you first. What is your one play that you would recommend out of, I mean, I'm assuming it's something you've already said. If not, you can definitely add on to that.
And it's going to be Ja'Cory Brooks. And any way you want to slice it, whether that's yardage or receptions. That's the most no thought process bet that you can make in this game, because with the bracket coverage that's going to be on Williams, he has the highest upside.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously not going to find me disagreeing with that one,
Are you taking that same side, or are you going to find something else that you would also recommend as your favorites too?
Yeah, so I obviously do recommend that, but I will go somewhere else, and it's one we've talked about still already. It's Brock Bowers, anytime touchdown, plus 100. This is in multiple spots out there right now, despite the minus 130 line on FanDuel that actually moved to minus 135 right before we recorded this.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, it's going to keep going in that direction. In my initial wrote-up, I think I said it would close at minus 150 in most spots. And we've kind of talked about it a lot, but just to give a little bit more context, this guy is a freshman. And he has 12 touchdowns this year.
Yeah,
he's a freshman, a true freshman that's being regarded as probably one of the top 3 tight ends in the nation right here. Also, this team is very willing to use him in creative ways. He has 4 rushing attempts for 56 yards and an additional touchdown on the ground this year. How many other tight ends do you guys know that do that kind of stuff? This guy's an absolute beast. This will be out. I wanted to save it for this podcast here, but this will be out as one of my favorite plays all over Twitter for the next couple of days. So, yeah, I love Brock Bowers to get in the end zone right here.
So, real quick on Brock here, if I can. So, because I haven't watched Brock, probably 1% of how you guys have been paying attention to college football this year for these SEC teams like Georgia. if you were to compare him right now as a freshman to a prolific tight end in the NFL based on his skill set, size, hands, everything, is there anybody in that? Is there any comparison, or is it like he's just great, but he doesn't have anybody? He doesn't have any doppelganger in the NFL. Is there anybody you can compare him to right now based on what you've seen in his first season?
I feel like Brad, you should have a better answer than I will right here. This is tough.
Man, anybody. Man, I would probably say this is tough because you have to think about it. He's still undersized for what he's going to be by the time he graduates. So I would say this is a stretch, but a leaner Darren Waller is probably the best because he's going to be bigger than Darren Waller. He's not as fast as Darren Waller, but he runs routes just as clean as Darren Waller, especially that seam route that he runs. It's that's what I'm afraid of is giving us the trouble is us him busting us open in the seam. But he's also a great jump ball receiver. Like he has a little bit more vertical ability than like a Travis Kelce, who's like pretty much glued to the ground.
Stu, do you have any 2 cents on that NFL comparison at all?
Yeah,
well, I guess yes, because he's a freshman. I understand the whole size being small thing, and like he's got room to grow. But
by no way am I saying that Darren Waller is small. I'm just saying that
Darren Waller, 5'5".
We think about a very, very thick tight end who ends up losing that athleticism. I don't think Brock Bowers goes under that category.
Yeah, no, that's a good one right there. I mean, it's tough because, like you said, if you looked at him right now while he's playing, you'd probably go, "Is that guy a receiver or a tight end?"
Yeah,
he really kind of looks athletic out there. So it's hard for me to say. I would say we don't really know how he's going to look in a couple of years, but I would say my thought process is he is part of the Kyle Pitts new age tight end.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah,
a hybrid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, he's not going to the NFL to block, right? Kyle Pitts isn't out there in Atlanta to block, and this guy isn't going to be in the NFL to block either.
All right. So before we say our final goodbye, is there any other 2 cents, anything, whether it's a bet or anything else whatsoever that you guys want to get out before we hit that stop button on this podcast? Any other things you want to drop on the podcast? The floor is yours.
I want to go ahead and say Roll Tide. I haven't said it all podcast. I'm saying it now. Roll Tide.
He has held it inside. He's just like...
It took everything in my power not to wear an Alabama jersey on the podcast, but I had to be unbiased when I'm giving my plays.
Oh, that's getting clipped. We're going to clip that out. All right. Stu, are you crying right now? Stu, what do you got?
No, the timing on that one's great. Yeah, no, I think we got out a lot of good stuff in this one. A lot of people are kind of looking at NFL Sunday, but, me and Brad out here, we kind of get paid to go look at everything for you guys. So I really don't think a lot of these lines are going to be here by kickoff time. I don't actually think it's going to even be close on some of those plus 350s we gave out are going to look a lot more like plus 190. So you guys might want to get in this one pretty quickly here.
All right. Once again, if you want to get any kind of feedback for anything that you guys are doing, whether it's maybe the payout odds have changed, the lines have changed slightly, or something that has not been addressed at all on this podcast, which at this point, 53 minutes in, it's doubtful. Make sure you go to betkarmachat.com. That is the automatic invite link to come join our chat room on our Discord server. And then you can just be like, hey, this I'm looking at. What do you guys think of this? This has changed. Are we still betting on this? Blah, blah, blah. Anything under the sun for this Georgia-Alabama matchup. That's what we're here for. It's a free Discord to go along with our free tools on betkarma.com. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate Brad and Stu giving us some time here to go over their thoughts. And let's win some money Monday night, boys.